Welcome, everybody, to the 8th edition of Chicks with Dig from Boxing Asylum. Joining me today, Joe Kennedy. I'm your host, Matt DiGianardo. Going to be going over what has been a few months of action since we have last seen you, folks. Just recently, I had a welterweight unification that was going on between Jessica McCaskill and Sandy Ryan, which ended in a much disputed draw in a fight that at least the announce crew seemed to think that Ryan was bossing. But I myself kind of thought this one, Joe, it was for me, it was one of those where I thought McCaskill might have gotten a draw out of it. Maybe it leaned Ryan. And I kind of felt similarly about the recent Sinisa Estrada fight as well. And I thought her opponent seemed like she might have had an argument for a draw. But again, I leaned Estrada. There have been a couple of close ones here recently.
Yeah, I think certainly with McCaskill, I think the writing's been on the wall, so to speak, on her career for a little bit. I think due to her style, it's a high output style. She's not the most technically proficient. She kind of falls in on her punches a little bit. And once that athleticism was going to start waning, you could kind of see her decisions get a little bit closer that she won, and then expecting her to get turned over by a lesser opponent who I would have expected her to beat Sandy Ryan, because I'm not wholly impressed by Sandy Ryan. But I think the fact that this was a draw, and I think probably if it had happened 3 or 4 years ago, McCaskill would have swept this one. I think it kind of shows the direction that McCaskill's gone. She's probably concentrating a little bit too much in the commentating game at the moment.
Well, and I have to wonder if the many prayers of Argentina weren't heard by the ears of God, and the best that Ryan was able to come away with was that draw. But I thought that she looked sharper than she had. I was kind of surprised that she gave McCaskill as many problems as she did. She definitely did better work on the inside than I expected. But it was a close fight. It was definitely a close fight. What I thought could have gone either way. I wouldn't mind necessarily a rematch. We'll see what happens. That was in Florida. Honestly, I don't think McCaskill gets that draw in Ryan's neck of the woods. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with the rematch. There might be a little bit of appeal for that one.
Yeah, Ryan is petitioning for it, and in the UK, I've seen on Twitter she's asking for it to be in Derby, where she's from. So I think she'll take every bit of home advantage she should get.
Yeah, and even if they don't get that headlining fight right in her backyard, it wouldn't be a bad co-main with something else. I think it does stand to be entertaining for those who didn't catch it. Be sure you get on that one. And also, reminded me again, another close fight that we saw from a few months back was Sinisa Estrada against Leonela Paola Udica, in a fight where Udica definitely surprised. She's not much of a puncher, but she caught Sinisa off guard quite a bit there, Joe. And I just was watching it back again, and I just can't help but think that Estrada would have made her life so much easier if she would have just got behind the jab even a little bit. Pretty much missing from her arsenal that entire fight.
Yeah, she has a tendency to drop the fundamentals a little bit and kind of go all out from an attacking perspective, to the detriment of her own defensive game. I think she, her footwork notwithstanding, she does kind of leave herself in difficult positions coming out of combinations that will leave herself open. You think that someone with a big punch might be able to time her in between shots and cause her real issues. Someone maybe with a bit more pop than Utica might get her in real serious trouble. And I think there's probably a couple of fighters out in the smaller weights maybe who are showing some signs of having that kind of power. So hopefully we'll see Sinisa in closer fights like this in the future, because I think up until now she's kind of had it all her own way a little bit. She's fought a couple of good fighters on the way up, but this is the first time in quite a while we've seen her tested and not sweep a 10-0 win or get an early knockout. So I think it's good for Sinisa to be in these kind of fights, to be honest.
Am I wrong to think that it looked like she has slowed down a little bit too? I didn't quite see the explosiveness.
Yeah.
She is 31 now. She's not a young lady anymore.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, wasn't there like some commentary about her being sick in the lead up to it or on fight night, having a cold or something like that. It's something clanging around the back of my brain that's saying that maybe she wasn't 100% tip top, but I can't say for sure. But yeah, I think I've not. I think 31 maybe on the other side of your peak for a female fighter. I think for the males, it's probably not the case, but I think time will tell with the female side of the sport whether or not these girls reach their peak kind of in their late 20s, maybe a little bit earlier than the men who seem to get their man strength a little bit later, so to speak.
But she also hasn't taken a bunch of damage. I mean, considering
No,
she's a 25 fight veteran, multiple weight champion, but 10 twos and a pretty much easy go of it the entire way just based on the talent gap. So
the
she's
only
not
thing,
shop worn.
yeah, the only thing that I would say against that would be the rumors of her sparring. Apparently, she's an absolute savage sparrer in the LA rink.
And she's been sparring boys for about
Yeah,
20 years now too.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, if you believe everything Sergio Mora says, which I would counsel anybody not to, she's been fighting, boys since she was, a young teen going into gyms and just, fighting man, woman, or child. And if that's the case, and she's been racking up the miles in the gyms, then, you know, regardless of whether you have 25, 10 twos or more fights under your belt, those years of sparring do accumulate over time as well. So maybe we're seeing the impact of that.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's a few fights out there that I think could definitely be trouble for you. And if she's not on top of her game, I think Yocosta Valle just might have her number.
Mhm.
Yocosta has been looking fantastic in all of her recent fights. She looked good just last week or the week before against Maria Macheo Santizo, pretty much taking the entire round, the entire fight. The only thing she didn't do was drop her opponent in 3-minute rounds. I don't think that she would have had any problem finishing that off. But when I see Valle, she might not be as explosive as Estrada. She might not quite throw as good a combinations as Estrada, but I think that she's just more of traditionally kind of balanced fighter. And I just think her good technique and consistency could definitely take a fight over Estrada. That really, in my eyes, is 50-50. I'd be putting a bet on it just if I see someone's getting better than even money, just because I think it could go either way.
Yeah, Acosta's fundamentals are really impressive. The jab 1-2 and then bringing a left hook in behind it as well, which he kind of introduced a little bit later on in the fight, um, was very impressive. I think she's. I don't know if you wouldn't read too much into the defeat against. She has there's a common opponent there. Tiny Tina. I think she was beaten by Tiny Tina back in 2018. Since then she's on a 12 or 13 fight win streak, and yeah, I'd agree. I think that I'm not sure that the bookies would have it as a 50-50. I think they'd probably lean Sneecia, but it's probably as good a 50-50 in on paper anyway. I think it's definitely the fight to make as well. I think that'll be the unified minimum weight as well. So hopefully they can just get this squared away and have the fight happen next. So I think it's a really good fight. And yeah, Vaya has looked better and better, I think, as I've seen her as well. Just very, very good fundamentals. Um, doesn't shift around and move around the ring quite as well as Senicia, and the combos aren't as flashy. But I think Senicia has a habit, especially later on in the fight, of her arms getting a little bit loose and a little bit wide, and the arcs of her punches just softening a little bit. And I think Vaya seemed to have a little bit straighter shots, just be a little bit more technically sound, particularly towards the end of the fight when people start to get tired and the technique starts to wane. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting fight, and hopefully it's one that they make next, because it'd be good to see a unified champion down at those weights.
Well, and I think if I'm looking at 105 and 108, I think any combination of Estrada, Valle, or Neri Plata, I think that those are all good fights, and I consider them in my head all 50-50 fights probably. So,
Yeah,
um, make those happen. As far as I'm concerned, the fight that is not going to be being made quickly, unfortunately, is here seems Savannah Marshall is out for injury. Is going to be her against Shadeja Green. Green is going to be granted some sort of a chance for an interim belt or some crap like that. But they're definitely on a collision course following Marshall's victory over Franchon Cruz Dezern, and Green taking care of a little bit of business against Olivia Curry, unfortunately going the distance in that one. We'll start off with Marshall against Cruz Dezern almost 3 months ago at this point there, Joe. But
Yeah.
it was it was a fight where just the greater technique seemed to win out at the end of the day, and Dezern just could not seem to find a comfortable punching distance. And whenever she tried to make it sloppy, Marshall just kind of tied her up, and that was that. Um, I guess we didn't learn anything new about Savannah Marshall in that fight, but she is now a two-weight champion, unified now, undisputed at 168. What did you think of that performance?
Yeah, it was a bit of a sloppy fight. I think I've made my opinions on Savannah Marshall's style now and before that. Just doesn't rub me up the right way. I think her style is just a bit. It's a bit awkward. It's a bit. I think it's about offsetting the tempo of the other fighter. It's a bit twitchy, and then yeah, she has a powerful right hand coming in behind it, but it just something about that Peter Fury style. It just rubs me up the wrong way a little bit. She just reminds me of like a middleweight female Huey Fury or something like that. But it wasn't a great one for the eyes, I don't think. But yeah, definitely Marshall a better fighter between her and Cruz Dezern. I think that the Green fight makes sense then next for Savannah Marshall. When you put two big punches like that together, that potentially if that fight catches fire, that could be a really really good fight. I think the Cruz Dezern Marshall matchup just didn't seem to gel. Like you said, there was a good bit of holding on. Cruz Dezern just didn't have the punch or the output really to make Marshall have to dig in to the deepest trenches of her skill or her talent to kind of get the win. I think she almost won it in kind of third or fourth gear. But I think that the Shadeja Green fight, unfortunately, she didn't get the KO in the last fight, so it's not like she's got the huge momentum that she kind of did going into that fight. But I still think that's a good fight. And if the Savannah Marshall fight is off because she's injured, maybe get her and Cruz Dezern in, and see if she can get the knockout there. But Cruz Dezern I wouldn't write off either in that Shadeja Green fight because Green is pretty untested as well, and Dezern has been around the block.
Well, and I really like that Shadeja is working with Ann Wolf now. Well, that was the development that I liked, even though she didn't get the stoppage in that fight. When I heard Ann Wolf is in her corner, I'm like, all right, this is some real shit right here. Because that means that Ann, like, she sees something right there, and
and the focus is right.
Pardon?
And it also means the focus is right. That Green is not out there trying to be a boxer. That she knows, hey, I've got dynamite in my right hand, and I need someone to teach me how to detonate.
Yeah, and I think Ann Wolf is just such a no bullshit person that she's not going to tolerate anything with Shadeja getting a little bit if she gets a little bit off the training regimen or anything like that. I mean, we've seen the video of Ann running them boys down. She's definitely not going to take no shit off of a woman herself there. Because I wouldn't doubt, push comes to shove, that Ann could still uncork a right hand and Shadeja's night in the gym.
Ask James Kirkland, I'd say.
Oh Jesus! I was watching Kirkland Angulo the other day, and what a freaking fight! I mean, I would love for this to be a slugfest between Marshall and Green, and I would love for it to come down to just that Ann Wolf gym endurance and see what happens, because I think they just been working together that one fight, but I did see her drop off her output later on in the fight. So I'd like to see a little bit up in that cardio and stuff, because what worries me potentially, Joe, is, I mean, Marshall can punch herself. I mean, she's no freaking slouch. I don't know that she's the puncher Green is, even though she's faced the better competition. But I do believe that Shadej is probably most dangerous in the first 5 or 6 rounds, and then it all depends on what kind of juice she has left and what Marshall can do from there, and what she might have had taken out herself.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting as well is on the other side of these big punching females is what the chins are like on the fighters who are receiving them as well, because it's a big unknown in female sports, obviously, or not female sports, the female boxing. Girls with unbelievable chins, like you could point to Katie Taylor, obviously having a great chin and great recovering abilities that she's shown in the Serrano and Cameron fights as well. But you'd wonder, we saw Terry Harper get absolutely rewired from a punch by Alicia Baumgardner. She hadn't shown any real frailties or a lack of chin before that, and you just wonder, if a big puncher like Green can start detonating on girls, how many of them will be more like a Terry Harper kind of reaction or a Katie Taylor kind of reaction. Your chin is something that can't really be strictly developed in the gym, right? You seem to be either born with the heart or you're not. And I think as we see these female punchers start to become more prolific in the sport, it'll be interesting to see what the kind of chins are like out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the curiosity is, if we end up, and we'll get into the fight later, if this 12-3s that Serrano's doing might move into the norm. I know the WBC has balked at sanctioning this fight, but who knows what can happen? You got to start that trail somewhere. And if anything, Amanda Serrano is definitely a trailblazer in the sport of women's boxing. But we'll get to that fight here in a couple. They hit on a couple of other little things here down the way. I think one of the big stories that we have going, obviously, recently in boxing has been a couple of bad PED tests, I guess. Popping positive are the ladies. You had Hannah Gabriels doing that, killing off that rematch with Clarissa Shields. And then you also had Alicia Baumgardner having a positive test come in that was shown to be positive just, I think, a couple of days after her fight with Christina Leonard-Dartu. We did not learn about it for, I think, about 30 days after her fight with Christina Leonard-Dartu. And I tell you what, it's a shame she got revenge for that first only defeat on her ledger there, Joe, and looked good doing it. She really is a fantastic fighter, but she's a fighter that's probably on some sort of PED.
Yeah, it's a real shame, isn't it? Like, I think when we were last talking back in May, one of the things we were talking about was just how good Alicia Baumgardner looked, and in particularly just the way she throws punches, her technique. She, under the stewardship of our mate
Tony
Superman Tony Harrison, like, he just has her throwing shots and combinations so crisp, so well, so beautiful, like you'd see a male fighter. And just to see then that she goes and pops positive is just it's very disappointing. You'd wonder what she's on, whether it's something that helps her train harder, train for longer, keep her in the gym longer so that she can work on her technique, or whether it's something that is just trying to boost her power. I don't know the details of it enough to be able to say exactly what she was on, and but either way, it is very disappointing, and it raises suspicions about Tony as well. For me, I'd never had suspicions of Tony before, but
well, yeah, how can you when he's just slumped over in the fucking corner?
yeah. Well, like, you'd wonder then, like, whether, because he is a hot and cold fighter, right? Like, if you compare the performance against Brian Perella versus the performance against Sergio Garcia, and it's two different fighters, and one way you might be able to explain that away would be being on cycle versus off cycle, and I don't want to go down. I didn't want to go down that track of not believing fighters and casting aspersions. But I think when you have a positive test in the gym like that, it's only natural. So it's disappointing on a lot of fronts. Look, hopefully she can come out of this in with a 6 month, 2 year. I don't know what what the process is going to be and what the punishment's going to be, if any, or whether this is going to be litigated away like Conor Ben, or whether she's going to sit and do a 2 year stretch and go into bare knuckle boxing like Kamil Sokolowski. It depends on what your promoter stance is, what your team stance is, and if you have the money to fight it, I guess time will tell what happens with Alicia. But definitely, it's disappointing because the matchups that we were kind of considering for her were just mouth-watering. We were talking about a Serrano fight. We were talking about a, a possible fight with a rematch with Mayer, a possible fight with Taylor, maybe. And all those now seem quite far away.
Yeah, it's a shame. The everything was lining up for that Serrano versus uh, Baumgartner fight that I wanted, and poof, it all goes up in smoke.
Yeah.
Much like the Colorado Buffaloes looking like one of the best teams in college football. But I digress. I digress. That was a rough day. Mr. Wellings joining us saying, "What the hell's going on? Jay didn't die for this unscripted Wednesday night frivolity, excuse me." Then Arton Castleton, let's see, Castellan. There we go, Castellan. Sorry about that, Ayrton. Says, "Love Chicks with Digs." Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. We also got Dr. FMG in there, Jim McDonald Boxing. I know Matt Butters is in there. F2. Let's see here. I think there was a couple of others. ABC was in there as well. And we do appreciate everybody that has dropped in the chat. See, Steve, that's why we do this, is so that people have some joy in the middle of their week. We remember, like, we don't have lives, as we've been
Yeah.
so accused of many, many times in the past.
Get on to Chicks with Digs on a Wednesday night, or else there's no female boxing for you.
Absolutely. Well, and if you look at everything going on, I mean, maybe women's boxing is all that'll be left. And Steve will just have to do it, or he'll have to discuss no boxing whatsoever.
Well, I think if Eddie Hearn had his way, and that probably would be the case, he'd be just paying the female fighters.
All Sky Nicholson all the time.
Oh, fuck me. We had to
That's
talk about that fight, actually. How crazy was that?
I unfortunately, after I didn't watch the fight because I just figured it was going to be a bore fest, and then after I heard the gentleman had a heart attack in the corner and later died, I'm like, yeah, I'm just not that morbid that I'm going to go through this exercise.
Yeah. It was shocking. Like the poor lady was getting, on her way to getting, she was just getting picked off by Sky, who couldn't really knock out a wank, to be honest. She's not got the biggest punch at all. Like, but must have been pretty hard on the trainer seeing it, because yeah, you just keel over at the end of the fight. It was one of the wildest things I've ever seen. I think if it had happened obviously around earlier, then maybe the fight would have been called, and the maybe the event would have been postponed or whatever. But as it was just kind of on to the next fight, and it was very strange, really weird situation. And yeah, RIP to that fighter. As her husband, I think, was actually her coach as well. So it wasn't just losing her coach, but also losing her husband. So yeah, bad day at the office.
Yeah, that's a very, very bad day in the office. Peace be with that family. What a terrible way to go. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say it necessarily the event needed to be ended like that, but it wasn't like the grotesque levels of Owen Hart falling into the ring from
Oh yeah.
coming like, but it was yeah, not a pleasant night there whatsoever. Somehow, some way, that managed to ruin Sky Nicholson's big moment, which obviously probably made Eddie sad, and God knows we can't have that. Terrible, terrible days.
Yeah, Scott, Eddie was probably rubbing one out in ringside before it all happened. So yeah, it must have been very devastating for him.
Absolutely. Danny asking, what if is this just gone away? Are we waiting for a B sample? I haven't heard anything since the initial stuff myself regarding Baumgartner.
And
Um,
interesting enough, like Baumgartner's response wasn't like a hands up mea culpa. It was kind of all these, opaque references to the Bible and to my team, and fingers up shush emoji and stuff like that. Very strange.
yeah, it's well, and it's The problem is is the lack of consistency when it's like Sokolowski or however the shit you say his name, like like he gets this 3-year ban and just goes to bare knuckle boxing. Nobody cares about that, but other people, it's 6 months, it's a year. It's just it depends on the name and how they think it can harm the sport. I think at the end of the day, which is wrong. I mean, that's not justice. Like it's like have you ever heard the rumors that the reason that Michael Jordan initially retired is because it was actually due to his gambling habits and he was going to have to take a suspension. So he figured if he just retired instead of being suspended, it would preserve his name, which would help preserve the sport because basketball experienced such incredible growth underneath him.
So all that shit about him wanting to be a baseball player to prove his dad right or something like that was all bullshit.
Yeah, basically.
But he was a shy baseball player, so I wouldn't disbelieve, I wouldn't, not believe it.
You're so everyone says that, but he wasn't like great in the minors or anything like that. But if you ever tried to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball,
No.
it's insane.
Yeah.
You like basically have to like swing at the time that they release. It's absolutely freaking nuts. So like anybody who can do that in general, like they're coordinated and athletic. I sure as fuck can't do it.
How the fuck did Bo Jackson do it and play football at the same time?
He was incredible, man. He was an absolute freak of nature, and that's one of the worst and most ridiculous injuries that has ever happened to anybody in sports. It just anyway, we're getting way off topic here. Somehow we managed to get to Bo Jackson. We're talented like that. Welcome again to the ADD Sports Hour. I'm your host, Matt DiGianardo. With me today, Joe Kennedy. So let's kind of go and not necessarily go in chronological order, but kind of knock this out of the way and obviously work into what's going on next for her. But and what was ultimately a pointless rematch. Joe, Amanda Serrano beating the living crap out of Heather Hardy again in a fight where the referee probably should have stepped in and stopped it again. Amanda looking good. There was that fight. I think it might have been against Erica Cruz when I didn't think she looked necessarily as sharp as I had wanted her to be, but she looked quick. Her punches were good. She was doing a few things better in the way that I thought her positioning was going to the body, not leaning as much. She definitely was been fixing some of the mistakes she made in the Katie Taylor fight. I can see that for sure. But nonetheless, nothing more than an unnecessarily brutal sparring session for Serrano in this one. Did you happen to catch this vile beatdown?
I did, and unfortunately, I caught the first fight as well live. I think it was on the undercard of Haney Abdullayev, and geez, it should have been called at the 7th or 8th round. I remember by the end of that, I was there with my wife, and she could hardly look at poor Heather's in the ring. She was in bits, so I was surprised just to see this made again. And it kind of emerged in fight week that Serrano had wanted to give Heather the fight because they were friends, and basically she needed the dough. So just a weird kind of dynamic where Serrano wanted to just get her friend in the ring to beat the shit out of her again in the same kind of fashion. And, it probably should have been called early as well. But I think Hardy actually popped positive after that first fight as well. So before, which is weird because she, clearly didn't help her out. She got the absolute piss beaten out of her. But yeah, just a strange rematch that never needed to happen. I don't think we learned that and really about Amanda or Heather, apart from the fact we definitely don't need to see a third fight. But I think that Amanda's career now is probably, I think the 3-minute round fights is going to be really interesting to see if this takes off. Maybe this will just be a flash in the pan. It'll just be a chance for her to break another record, and be the first woman to have a high profile 10-3 fight for a belt. But
12-3.
12-3. Sorry, it's a 12-3. Wow.
12-3.
Oh wow.
What's a shame is her fight is there's no titles up for grabs listed, so I don't know if all the sanctioning bodies are taking a weird look at this, and maybe it's just kind of turned into a test run for her more so than anything. But taking on 12-2 Daniela Ramos. only one stoppage on her resume, so that'll be rough for a rough go for her. And
Yeah.
she wasn't her losses in her career were up at 130 pounds against Katarina Thanders, who's actually going to be fighting here coming up, and then Alhi Mekhaled, who knows at the very least a really tough gal. Who's got some fairly decent fundamentals at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Um,
she's a good who fought Baumgartner last, right?
yeah, she fought Baumgartner, and then I think she had a really kick-ass fight with Pursoon late
Yeah.
last year. I think it
She's a
was.
part-time fighter, you know. I think when I saw the lead up to that Baumgartner fight, she had to take like 2 months off so she could do a proper camp. And I think it was only the first or second time she'd done that. So for someone who's, only got one foot in the game, she is quite good and quite crafty.
Yeah. So the defeats on her record not bad. Got an undefeated fighter, and then someone we've seen give really good fighters some hell. We know that she's not one of the kind of bums that you run into that get records against. God, I got Central American housewives. I don't know how else to say it. Don't think of that as sexist. We think of all sorts of ways to talk about male fighters of the equivalency with different terms as well. But so
Try being
it's
a housewife as well, Maddie. It's no cup of tea, I'll tell you.
so Ramos, though, what's interesting about her is all her fights at 126. Well, her last four at least. I'm sure earlier in her career she might have been there. Three of the four have gone to a split or a majority decision. Not the greatest competition either. Brenda Karen Carvajal, I believe, is a former Titleist, if I recollect. But so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. My hunch is that this is scheduled 12 threes, but it's not going to go 12. Amanda Serrano is one of those fighters who consistently has one of those rounds in a fight, even the one against Katie Taylor, where he said if that was a 3-minute round, the opponent's not getting out of it. It's just not happening.
Yeah, her punches just they have a thudding kind of staying quality to her power. She's not necessarily a one punch knockout artist at the highest level, but you could see the accumulation of her punches having real effect
Like
towards.
an Angulo kind of thing going on,
Yeah, and good, like a Subriel Matias kind of thing as well. He gets people in trouble at the end of rounds as well, just because of the thudding, accumulative nature of his punches as well. So I'd agree. I think Serrano. I'd expect her to get this woman out there early. And then I think, like, I don't know whether she's going to be going for more of these kind of fights, like it's is her focus now not on the Katie Taylor rematch? Is it not on becoming undisputed? Is it more about helping Heather Hardy and her friends get money, making money herself, and kind of breaking records and being like a beacon for the sport, as opposed to necessarily being a woman at the top in the prime of her abilities, trying to take as many belts as she can. I wonder whether her focus or her alignment's shifted at all.
Yeah, I think Serrano, or excuse me, Baumgartner popping positive. I think that shifted her entire plan. I think after the Cameron fight, obviously, I think the Taylor fight had kind of lost its steam,
Mm-hmm.
and then going for all those belts at 130 pounds in what would be a really big fight, a good money maker for women's boxing too, against Baumgartner. That's out the window. So the best that she can do is fight the opponents that are in front of her, and if she can, pave some new ground while she's doing it, I think she's willing to do that. As you remember that interaction between her and Taylor right before her fight, like I think Amanda respects like her position and the moment, and just realizes that somebody has to do it, and she kind of feels honored that it's her.
Yeah, the pressure doesn't seem to burden her. I think she does. She quite enjoys being at the edge of the sport, so to speak, or the leading edge of the sport, so to speak. And she's a great ambassador for it. So long as she doesn't go getting popping positive for PEDs anytime soon. I think her fighting style, her dedication, um, and her skills, are evident for everyone to see when she's fighting. So I think she's definitely a great ambassador for the sport in that sense.
Yeah, and she's putting off motherhood and the other things that she'd want to do so she can get this done. I think that is kind of one of the things that separates men and women in the sport. Adrian Broner could knock up as many women as he wants, and if it doesn't necessarily affect what he's doing in the ring. But women don't
Yeah,
have that chance. You can't be get taking body shots when you're carrying a fetus. I don't think the doctor would recommend it.
yeah, definitely not. Even afterwards, man. Like my wife's had 2 kids, and it's a brutal recovery process, whichever way they come out. Like it's yeah, it would boggle the mind how someone would be able to do that. In the middle of a career, kind of take a hiatus, have a couple of kids, and come back. Cesarean scars and all. It would be it would be quite the achievement.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, Joe. The one upside of all the changes in the laws in the United States is that more women might take up boxing just as a sneaky way to get that abortion. It's just one of those things that economists call an externality. Um,
Body sparring only today. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, all right, our trip to the darkness. We had to do it once. This is the
I,
boxing asylum. We do not hide who we are.
I would say that like I do boxing here in New York City, like I train in a Church Street gym, and there's so many female boxers coming in the door. It's amazing. There's female trainers. Let's say in any group session, you'd have maybe 20 to 30% are female fighters, and all ranges of skill. I think I told you before off air. The last time I went sparring, I caught a serious beatdown off some chick, who was getting ready for a UFC fight, and like she put it on me like no other fella had put it on me before. So I think the future's bright in terms of the female fighters. I think you know as they become more prolific and bigger stars emerge, maybe there'll be a fighter who'll kind of break that boundary of having kids and stuff like that, and still being able to fight. Time will tell, but I think just wanted to point out that I think the female fight scene is good and still growing.
What I worry about as it's gaining its momentum is the chances of boxing being cut off as an Olympic sport if they don't straighten out their shit.
Yeah,
If that amateur pipeline is disrupted and that that chasing a gold medal kind of thing isn't there, which I think a lot of people love the idea of that. I mean that's a hell of an accomplishment and something to take incredible pride in. A gold medal, my God. But so you take that out of the fold, I think it could kill the momentum. I know it's a few years away. 2024 is good to go, but yeah, I'm not so sure if they take away in 2028 if we're going to see the same run in women's boxing and probably the men's side of the ledger too to some degree.
definitely, and more so for the women's, because I think that we're riding a wave that had begun back when female boxing was first introduced to the Olympics. Thanks in some part to Katie Taylor, actually, who I think had showcased her skills to an Olympic committee to try and prove that the sport was merited enough to be featured in the Olympics. So um, you'd wonder whether we'd be at this stage and talking about women's boxing the way we are if that hadn't happened. So definitely, I think if it was to fall out in the 2028 Olympics, it would be really really detrimental, and you'd see that conveyor belt of fighters definitely slow down. Just speaking from an Irish perspective, I can name 3 or 4 Irish women on the amateur side who, because the amateur side of the sport is so appealing to them, they didn't bother turn over. The last boxing book I read was Kelly Harrigan's biography. Kelly is 33 now, and she won Olympic gold in Tokyo, and no mention of pro contractor, whether she even considered turning pro in her biography. She was an amateur fighter through and through, and if there was no Olympics there for her, she just wouldn't have got into boxing. So I would be really really concerned if the sport was to be excluded from the Olympics in 2028, because I think it would definitely damage the sport. And just to answer Danny Young's question, yes, she did now. It didn't get end quite too well. I'll let you know as well.
Yeah, as soon as she found that out, she got a little bit more mouthy during arguments. It's like she
Yeah,
wasn't as worried anymore. I don't know what.
she saw a little chink in the armor. You know,
only trouble from here. Only trouble from here. It's just a shame that the Olympic Committee came to him. Who is it? The AIBA, and said to him, "Yeah, we see a lot of weird things here, and probably corruption, and you probably need to clean this sport up." So what did amateur boxing do? They said, "All right, try this on for size. We've got new rules but we're going to use the same people.
Yeah, oh, they're all Russians as well.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's very very it's really corrupt. On that end, I kind of think amateur boxing has become almost as corrupt as the bidding process for the World Cup at this point in time.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Sepp Blatter's fingers all over it. Like it is, it's a joke, and it's like it's not a new phenomenon either. You know, I think you can go back to the Seoul Olympics and Roy Jones Jr. getting beaten in the final, and you know Michael Conlan in Rio, and like there's like AJ winning his final against that Italian who beat him, and like I think there's it's not just a recent phenomenon. I think the old Italian saying of the fish rotting from the head definitely rings true here. That it's just from the top down for generations in that organization. It just seems to be corrupt.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll see how that turns out. It's a long, drawn out process, but when we talk about all the things that are pushing boxing towards its doom, the demise of boxing as an amateur sport, I think, would probably be the final nail in the coffin. It's kind of like one of those things like watch certain ice places melting. If that happens, we're fucked. Well, amateur boxing, that's the big ice piece we're looking at. If it's gone, yeah, we're probably fucked.
It's a canary in our mine.
It is. It is. And that's funny because Jim McDonald called me a coal miner's daughter earlier. I'm a coal miner's grandson, but not a coal miner's daughter. At least last I checked. I haven't considered going that route. I don't know. You never know.
Zoolander style.
It's just being a guy thing. I don't know. Is it going that well for you, Joe? It's there's moments. It kind of sucks at times. I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's a double edged sword sometimes, but I wouldn't change it.
No,
And you
you're
can change it nowadays. It is an option if you want to.
it is. It's you just is the grass greener? It's like I on the other side, I think I'd probably keep it trimmed, but that's another story for another day. Anyhow, let's see here. What else do we have? Dina Thorsland also fought in a 118-pound unification battle against Yulian Luna Avila. And what was a close fight for the first part until Thorsland kind of was able to find her distance, find her shots. Interesting fight. The question on everybody's mind, Joe, is does Ebbs fear Dina?
I think you know, I want to see Dina fight outside of Denmark first, really, before I would be able to say conclusively whether she'd have what she'd need to beat Ebbs. She probably does now. I'm not a big fan of Ebbs. I think that she's probably she's definitely overachieving in the sport for the talent that she's got. She's got a lot of heart, and she's got goodwill. Takes a shot, keeps on coming, which you know.
Yeah, she's a bad Aussie chick. She's a badass Aussie chick. They're as bad as they come.
Fucking right. So I think it's going to take a skilled fighter to beat that. Boxing, as we know, it sometimes it has less to do with skill and more to do with will. So I think in the will department, you're going to be doing pretty well to beat Ebbs. She's fucking strong. But I think that a skilled enough fighter, and Dina does look like she has that. She looks like she should have enough to beat Ebbs. But again, it tickles me a little bit that she hasn't fought outside of Denmark. And I think that maybe she's just getting a little bit too comfortable at home. I'd like to see her go on the road, maybe beat someone on the road. Maybe I think the Ebbs fight would be good. Or if Shannon Courtney's still around, maybe her, maybe that other Shannon who Ebbs beat. Just someone to get your passport out, see what it's like when you're not in your home country, surrounded by your home fans. Whether if someone puts it up you, whether you're comfortable enough to dish it back, or whether your skill just kind of wastes away and you get beaten by a more willed fighter.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. She, funny enough, parallels with her countryman Mikhail Kessler, who really didn't get his acclaim until he started heading to other countries to fight, and won some, he lost some, but he fought a great run of competition there.
Yeah, if she ended up being the female Mika Kessler, I'll be on the band train. I'll be on the train anyway, following her because he was a great fighter.
Man, I wish she could punch like Mikkel. That'd be
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, that would be great. Although she had a knockout in her second last fight, right?
I think so.
No.
God, it's been a while now. We're talking
Yeah,
about you're probably talking about a year ago. That's a long
yeah,
time. That's a long time to remember now.
yeah. I know it's very hazy for me as well. I'm just
You
yeah,
think that that should stand out though, knockout in a women's title fight, but here we are. Um, yeah, in a fight that there was no knockout on, another women's fight with multiple belts on the line. Marlon of Sparsa getting a majority decision over Gabriela Celestalanis. Esparza just not quite impressing the way that she should. I have heard rumors of a rematch of that fight potentially being in the cards. So we'll see. I don't know if you saw that one. I thought that was a kind of a draw-worthy fight myself. Again, that's been a few couple months out, I think. Oh no, that was no, that was a couple months out. So yeah, it's been a while, but another kind of draw-worthy fight where I thought the home fighter got the better end of the decision. Did you catch it?
yeah. It's a bit hazy for me now because it was a bit of a time ago, but I do remember seeing Esparza's last fight. Um, she's decent. I don't think that um, she's not on still at the level of like a Sinicia or a Castavalle either. I think her work's just a little bit sloppier, maybe not quite got the output or the footwork that the other two have. But she's a good fighter. I think she'll come. Um, got a lot of heart, as you need to be if you're a unified champion. But she wouldn't be at the top of the female game around those weights for me. But decent fighter, I'll say.
Yeah, she's had a good little run here recently. I mean, her last three fights, opponents have a combined record of 52, 3-2. I mean, that's so. I mean, you can't say that she's been slacking in the level of opponent category there, as is so easy to oftentimes do in the women's side of the sport. We have seen some very odd title challengers hopping into the ring at different moments.
Yeah.
But there's a few fights on the horizon here. You just tell me when you got one that you have a strong opinion on here. Let's go here. Let's see here. Got this one. I looked a bit into her opponent. Just could not get into her opponent as a title challenger. Ellie Scottney versus Laura Soledad Griffa, the IBF 122-pound belt on the line. Scottney, a decent enough fighter. Joe, I don't think this is going to be the fighter, the opponent, which is going to prove her medal at this point in time, though.
No, I saw Scotty's fight before this against that Argentine lady who was the previous holder before she got beaten by Ebbs, I think. And yeah, Ellie's she's decent. I think it'll take a good fighter to beat her, especially if she's the home fighter, which you'd likely be as well. Um, yeah, that should be a pretty routine win, I think, for Ellie.
Also on that card, Rhiannon Dixon versus Katarina Thanders, aforementioned earlier in the podcast. That's going to be a 10-rounder, 135 pounds. Let's see here.
Sanders is a live dog there. She's been in with some pretty good fighters. She's the girl who used to braid her hair and stuff like that, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's when I kind of got a little bit of feeling on there. There's a good handful of potential upsets this weekend there. This is definitely one of those times when I would tell people, hey, play a little low money round robin, just some dink around money. You might be
Yeah.
shocked what you can get.
She beat that Rachel Ball, friend of the pod, previous friend of the pod, in Norway. So I think that's actually a decent fight. I can't say I know a whole lot about Dixon, but I might keep an eye on the odds for that one.
For some reason, I think she might have been on the Olympic squad. I can't recollect though exactly. Let's see here. The on the Leewood Josh Warrington undercard. God, I maybe this fight's kind of been cursed from happening. Terry Harper, Cecilia Brakes, the 154-pound belts on the line. One held by Harper, one vacant. The WBO. So we got that is a decent fight right there. Breakus, God, I think Cecilia's got to be 40 years old now.
Yeah, at least.
But
Definitely seen the best for her previously, but I also think that Harper's got that vulnerability, and is just, you know, has not been operating at the same level that obviously Cecilia had in the past. Cecilia's obviously not been fighting hugely regularly due to her age. I think she'd retired at some stage as well, but I actually think that she might have enough to beat Terry in that fight. But I think that Terry definitely the higher weight will suit her. Maybe she'd be able to take a shot at 154. She definitely wasn't able to at 130. She obviously maybe took a little bit out of her trying to get down to that weight, but she's probably piling on the fish and chips now at 154 and maybe a little bit better for it.
yeah, and she's just the thing about Harper. I mean, she's all right. I mean, I guess like there's been a kind of equivalent of her skill level. Has scooped up a belt in boxing. There's nothing that absurd. But I wouldn't put her like in the first or even the second tier. I think of skilled fighters in this day of women's boxing. Just my opinion. Breakus obviously in her day was an A level fighter. It's just a question of what her level is at this point in time in her career. A couple of defeats to McCaskill. We shall see.
Well, regardless, Terry at least can go home happy knowing that she's still Canelo Alvarez's favorite fighter.
What's that?
At least she can go home happy now, knowing that she's still Canelo Alvarez's favorite fighter.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got that in your back pocket. I mean, well, why not just retire now? What else is there to achieve?
Exactly.
Let's see here. Gonna have a fight from Canada on that same day. Kim Clavel coming back from her loss to Jessica Neri Plata, taking on Eveline Bermudez. Bermudez, former title holder, been in there with some of the best of them. She is currently the IBF and WBO junior flyweight titleist. So I'm trying to think. So that would mean Clavel, no, that's still 108 pounds. That's still 108. So she's still at the same weight class she was against Neri. They steered away from that rematch, which was on the table, and with good cause. I don't know that Bermudez can beat her up the way that Neri did necessarily, but still, I don't know. I'd be kind of thinking this is a 50-50-ish kind of fight we're seeing. Excuse me, from Canada that on the 7th.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'd commend Kim for going into this fight, not straight off the back of the Plata fight. I think it's just a very difficult fight. Bermudez has some good wins in her record, and what I'd be worried about Clavel would be she seemed to run out of ideas against Plata. Plata introduced that left hook in the middle of the fight, started landing it pretty regularly and really busted up Clavel's nose, and she just couldn't make any adjustments in the fight to change the direction of the fight or to adapt to the hooks that Plata was bringing in. And I would worry that if the fight with Bermudez wasn't going her way, whether it's going to result in the same. By the end of that fight, Clavel's nose was in absolute pieces. It was busted up, and she just couldn't get out of the way of Plata's shot. So I think if it follows the same course against Bermudez, I think Bermudez is going to have the arsenal to maybe even finish her. But it's a good fight, and I commend Clavel for taking it. And Clavel's not a bad boxer herself if she can try to throw shots and keep her head off the line at the same time. Maybe if she can pick up a few things in the gym between that Plata fight and now, maybe she can go out and beat Bermudez, and it would be a great win on her record, and it would go a long way to dispelling the what must have been a heartache of the defeat in that unified title clash. So it would definitely put her back on the road towards the titles if she does beat Bermudez. But it's probably one of those fights that's a bit make or break for her, which is exciting for fans, and I guess worrying if you're a Kim Clavel fan.
Yep, and as we know, there are many in Canada. It's actually kind of shocking how many people are coming out for some of these fights out there, headlined by female fighters. Just in general, it seems like the Quebec province, just a big fight place. They seem to love it there.
Yeah, I think the promotions. What are they called? Eye the Tiger promotions do some really good shows there, and a lot of fighters seem to be managed by or trained by that Ramsey guy as well, Mark Ramsey, who I think is a really good trainer as well. He's obviously we've got Beterbiev up in Montreal applying his trade as well. I think he works with like the Quebec State Sports Excellence. He was. I was looking at his training videos, and he's in a state of the art gym that's pretty much put up by the Montreal, put up by the Quebec state, and it just seems really high tech. And yeah, it's a good hub for boxing at the moment.
Yeah, in fact, they're enjoying it so much around there. 4 days after this, we're going to get a rematch there, Joe, and it's between Femke Hermans, who took the O of Mary Spencer. Mary Spencer says, bitch, no, coming back, trying to get it this time. They're throwing up the IBF junior middleweight title, which is vacant for this bout. First time the IBO was on the line. Hermans been in there with a good number of fighters. She is on a good run of form here right now. I think 4 or 5 straight victories since her loss to Savannah Marshall, where she was taken out by the third round. In fact, I thought she might was probably going to go the distance in, because I thought of her as a pretty good fighter. I was honestly impressed with that victory by Savannah Marshall, but nonetheless, Joe, Mary Spencer, going to get that revenge, or did she just not learn her lesson?
I don't think so. I'd be surprised. But the team obviously feels confident about one or two things with regards to the matchup that they wanted to take it again. You compare that to King Clavel, her team not going straight into the rematch. I would have been counselling Mary Spencer to do the same thing and to stay away from Hermans. But I think sometimes with a fighter, and it may be the case with Savannah Marshall, we were talking again about chins not being tested and stuff, and it could just be a case that Marshall has that pop that Hermans just can't live with, and maybe if Hermans is up against a fighter who doesn't quite have that same level of power, it can let her, her better skills, her better engine kind of take over for a fight, and maybe she'd be able to operate at a high level, just so long as she doesn't meet a big puncher like Marshall. And if there's not that many big punchers out there, then you could see someone like Hermans go pretty high in the sport.
Well, and I mean, she has only lost to Marshall, Cedaros, and what was a majority decision, to Clarissa Shields, and then a one defeated fighter at the time, Alicia Napoleon Espinosa. I don't know if I've ever seen her Fox before, off the top of my head. So, I mean, really pretty much only some good names and then a good record on there as well. And she's also been staying active as well. 2 fights this year, while Spencer has just been sitting back waiting for that revenge. So we'll see here. I think if, as I recall from that fight, Spencer just kind of got a lesson in the pro game, and I don't think sitting on the sidelines is going to be the way to get revenge. So we'll be looking at that one. I don't know if I've seen odds yet. Be curious to see that one. Maybe they are foolishly taking Spencer to win the rematch.
Yeah, and I think even Cedarus, if you look at her record as well, she's been beaten by some good fighters, but you could be you might be too initially drawn to that big KO loss that she has against Green, and again, she might just have never tasted the kind of power that Green brings, So I think sometimes those big KO losses, maybe in the women's game, might just be more of a red herring than they may be in the men's game.
Well, and she was stopped standing too. I think part of the problem with her is she's just that really fair-skinned Scandinavian, so everything shows on her too. Yeah, you get touched, you're going to be red. Does not do her. Also, I think they got those high cheekbones and.
Yeah, in that fight, she didn't react well to getting hit as well. Though I remember she was stopped standing up, but she wasn't really protecting herself either. So it wasn't I didn't think it was a bad stop, even though I think I had the over. It was stopped pretty early, so I wasn't necessarily happy that it got stopped when it did. But
it was still reasonable.
Yeah, I remember thinking that this girl could get hurt, because she seemed to be standing up, but she was dazed and not really protecting herself in a very functional way. So, I just think that sometimes the power of these girls, the outliers, can just be a little bit of a red herring when you're looking at these matchups.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see in that one. It'll be curious. I almost, if it might be one of those things. If Spencer gets in there and she's facing the same stuff that she did the previous fight, and she can't seem to find it, you might see a stoppage in this one. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes just that disappointment of being like, ah, shit, doesn't matter what I changed, it just I don't have it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we will see on that one. Let's see here. Keep on going down here. There's another one. Then let's see here. We're going to have that Serrano fight. That's going to be on October 27th. And I thought there might have been one more in there. Oh, we're also going to have the rematch. Yeah, we'll probably come back for the end of the year show. But yeah, we'll have a rematch the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I know you get to have the pleasure of participating in that holiday now, Joe, and I hope that it's everything and more to you.
Brilliant.
But we're also a couple days after going to have Chantel Cameron and Katie Taylor rematching back in Ireland again for the 140-pound titles. I don't necessarily think in the same way at the rematch with Hermans and Spencer that there could be a stoppage in this one, but I kind of think that Cameron just has Taylor's number, and if she goes in there a little bit more confidently, it could even be worse for Taylor. I just think that they're very kind of similarly skilled women, but a good big fighter beats a good little fighter every day of the week, and I think that's what we're running into here.
Yeah, that was the story of the first fight, and I was impressed with Cameron how well she was able to establish herself in the fight as well, and you could tell the difference in punching power between the two girls as well. Like, and that has to count towards something in the scoring. I think that Taylor does usually show an extra wrinkle in rematches. She introduced that left hook, the check left hook against Pursoon really well. And I think I'd expect her to introduce something in this rematch as well that would maybe give her more of an advantage than she had in the first fight. But I don't think it's going to be anything that will be enough to change the tide of the fight either. I think that Cameron, when she gets back on the jab, brings in the right hand behind it, and start introducing the left hook like she did in the first fight, I think that'll be pretty much the same again. Notwithstanding maybe some more pockets of success for Katie early on, but I think Katie's at the stage of her career now, and she's on the slide a little bit. Her foot speed's not what it was. Her combinations aren't as crisp. She still doesn't know how to punch the body. Still doesn't know how to throw an uppercut, and has just kind of plateaued for a long time, for a few years now under Ross Emmett, and I think we're just seeing her age catch up with her now, and she's in terms of her physicality and her physical attributes, definitely on the wane. So
I think she left something in the ring with Amanda that night. I
that's an
really
interesting
think,
one. Yeah,
yeah.
I think there's definitely a case to be said for that. Like the fifth round was definitely an attritional round that you'd be surprised if any fighter would be able to go through that and come out the same at the end of it. So I think there's definitely something to be said for that. But I think she's not like adapting like an older fighter has adapted. It's not like when you saw B Hop get older, you saw Mayweather get older. Like these fighters kind of adapted their style, right, and relied less on their footwork. Maybe became more defensively minded. Became showed a ring IQ that developed over the years. And I don't see that really with Katie. She still fights the same style in flurries and in a kind of amateur style, and I don't see her making the required adjustments to be able to beat Cameron. I think maybe if these two girls fought at the height of their powers, when Katie's in her prime, then I think maybe she would have enough to beat Cameron at the top of her game when her footwork's really where it used to be and her combinations are crisp and she's able to get in and out without getting hit or taking too much damage in the process. But I think those days are gone, and Cameron is at her peak. She's confident now after winning the first fight. She's got a good trainer in Jamie Moore. I don't see this going well for Katie. I don't think she'll get stopped. I think it'll go the distance, and I think she'll grip herself well. She's got an amazing heart. incredible intangibles, like her will to win and her defiance and going down and getting beaten, and her courage is just amazing. Like, it never ceases to amaze me. But I just don't think that she has enough to win this rematch.
Well, I think her team or herself, they made an error in the fact that Cameron was willing to go down to 135 for the rematch, where Katie could have put all of her titles up on the line, and that interested Cameron. And rather than fighting at 140, where I think we kind of know the outcome, seeing if Cameron has to boil a bit down for those 5 pounds, I think that was a more interesting proposition for them. That no guarantee that it was a favor that would favor them, but I think that it actually I mean, it might have been. They just wouldn't. They don't know.
Yeah, she, you don't know. It is, maybe maybe Katie will regret that if the rematch doesn't go her way. And but Cameron doesn't strike to me like she's a Josh Taylor type 140. Who's really skinny, who's really tight at the weight, and wouldn't necessarily be able to go down to 135 without sacrificing huge amounts. I don't think we'd see like a Chris Eubank Jr. kind of result if she did have to go down, but we don't know. Um, and maybe throwing a curveball like that would have been what the smart thing would have been to do for Katie, and not just going straight back into the rematch under the same terms. But like Katie, she's got an amazing self belief. She's a very religious person, as Danny Young alluded to in the chat. Like, she needs a more upbeat ring walk and not some gospel music. But that's
I was just gonna say, if you got to change something with the ring
yeah,
walk at least,
it's
come on.
DMX going or something like that. Maybe some Slipknot or something. I don't know.
She
But
needs Rob Kelly at this point in time. Like Rob, we need to get Rob to wrap Katie Taylor to the ring and get everything pumped up. That's really the missing component of the whole Katie gets the W cake.
yeah, but she's got incredible self belief, which comes with being a religious person, right? So she obviously is taking this fight for a reason. She obviously feels that she can do something, but from my untrained eyes, it just seemed like she had all the cards stacked for her. The fight was in Dublin. It was her homecoming fight, sold out arena. Um, you know, Apart from moving up to a new weight that she wasn't in before, she kind of had all those cards playing for her. But I just don't see how she turns it around without making huge adjustments. Um, and I just think that at her age, she's probably not able to do that. Um, I think that Michael Thompson alluded to in the chat as well. She a few fights ago, she probably should have changed trainers, and I've been saying that as well. Um, she hasn't shown many wrinkles in the program. It's all been the same kind of rinse and repeat style that she'd been known for in the amateurs. And how many times have you seen her hurt someone to the body? How many times have you seen her throw an uppercut? It's very, very rare, and she just seems maybe she does work on these things in the gym, and it's just a thing that when you get into a fight, you revert to type. But it doesn't bode well for being able to make the changes she needs to make in the rematch, considering she just doesn't show any progression in her pro career like that.
Well, it just goes to show, like, if you're technically sound at this stage in the women's game, especially at 10-2s, when the accumulation of punishment is roughly only half of what a men's championship fight is. Just being technically sound with that amateur background, the ability to throw 1-2 and then maybe turn the corner on a hook or something like that. I mean, you're going to beat 99% of the fighters out there. There's just so there's just such a lack of equivalently talented fighters. But again, I mean, that's changing, and it's changing rapidly. If Katie was, you know, 5 years younger, I think she would have ran into a much better crop of competition. And I'm not saying that she wouldn't have accomplished the things that she accomplished against that better set of competition, but it would have been nice to have seen her taken on some of the people that she might have actually inspired to come into the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
So Yeah, like Floyd did as he gets to be an old man. You never know at this rate. He might be doing a fight or an exhibition at the age of 55 against some 20-year-old young buck. Who knows what's
Wouldn't
next?
surprise me with Big Floyd.
Yep. And then in 30 years, maybe we'll end up with a metaverse rematch of Taylor versus Serrano, since we might not get it in this incarnation. Um, but I do believe that is the wrap up that we have. I'd like to thank everybody that wandered in the chat today. I appreciate you guys. I'd like to thank Joe Kennedy for coming out as well. I think, like I said, we will be back probably sometime in December, wrap it all up and give some end of the year picks if you might have not caught some fights along the way. But thank you very much to everybody for stopping by, and we will see you next time. And remember, every Sunday, a new episode of the Boxing Asylum Nut House comes your way live. Have a good
Woo!
one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matty.
You got it.